Good afternoon, dear members of the media. Welcome to the press conference following the summit of the Bucharest 9 countries. We have President of Latvia, President of Romania, and President of Poland participating together with the NATO Secretary General. We'll start with the statement of the Latvian President. Once again, good afternoon, dear members of media. We just completed the B9 summit, and I would like to start by, first of all, thanking the Romanian and Polish colleagues for supporting the organizers as the founders and also the co-hosts of this event. I would also like to thank the Secretary General, Mr. Stoltenberg, for being here as well, which allowed us to discuss not only support to Ukraine, but also the forthcoming Washington summit, talk about the current priorities and talk about issues that our diplomats and experts will continue working over the next month leading up to the Washington summit. This summit is historic because this is the first time that B9 met in the format together with the Swedish Prime Minister and Finnish President, which are representing full-fledged NATO member states now. It was a great opportunity to not only talk about deepening of the bilateral cooperation, but also discuss other issues and come to a conclusion that we are, to a large extent, like-minded countries with Sweden and Finland. This summit coincides with the 75th anniversary of NATO and 20th or 25th anniversary of some of the member states represented in the B9 format. We, of course, have the statement from the chair of the summit, but we have agreed during the summit, we did agree that from Washington summit we expect further strengthening of the NATO's deterrence and defense posture. We also expect the heads of states and government to continue improving the regional defense plans, and appropriation of the respective resources would also be important, such as air defense, control and command capabilities, as well as interoperability and other areas such as infrastructure, for example. We also quite intensely discussed that during the summit, leaders of the allied countries should insist that all member states should abide by 2% threshold of the defense spending per GDP. We will hopefully agree on further continuation of our capability development plans, and will hopefully agree on further ways to restrain Russia, to deter it from further aggression, and to reduce threats emanating from Russia. We also discussed hybrid threats and hybrid attacks coming or emanating from Russia and Belarus, especially towards those neighboring countries that are bordering with Belarus and Russia, and we'd agreed on further coordination when it comes to border security. The second big area that we discussed was long-term support to Ukraine. Everyone stands firm when it comes to supporting Ukraine in its fight against Russia. We all support territorial integrity of Ukraine and its right to self-defense. We also discussed the forthcoming weekend summit in Switzerland, which will be the first step along this political process. We fully support Mr. Zelensky's objective to achieve a long, sustainable and lasting peace. We also discussed, with regard to Washington summit, what we expect from the summit with regard to Ukraine's membership in the alliance. We must have a clear road map towards membership so that all the obstacles are eliminated before Ukraine joins the alliance. We also discussed a lot of practicalities when it comes to supporting Ukraine, starting from the Czech initiative on the supply of the ammunition or the munition delivery initiative, and also NATO's initiative, which we still need to agree, initiative regarding large-scale military support to Ukraine to reduce political pressures on Ukraine. Thank you once again to all the colleagues that took part in the summit, and thank you for being patient. Now it's over to my colleagues for the statements, and then we'll open the floor for questions if you'll have any. Thank you, Mr. Rinkiewicz. Now the floor is given to the Polish President, Mr. Duda. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, distinguished Mr. President, Your Excellency, distinguished Secretary General of the North Atlantic Alliance, ladies and gentlemen, first and foremost, let me thank you very much to you, Mr. President of Latvia. I thank Mr. Edgars Rinkiewicz for organizing this another summit of Bucharest 9. These are NATO member states of the eastern flank of Central Europe, which traditionally precedes the summit of NATO. This year, this anniversary summit will take place next month in Washington. And our meeting today, as it has always been for almost 9 years now, was aimed at discussing the most significant issues to us. We wanted to put on the table those most important questions, most important to us here in Central Europe, issues regarding security and the role of NATO. We wanted to discuss them and set out joint common priorities so that we can present them later at the NATO Washington summit. And I'm really delighted that we're able to do that today and that such an extremely viable discussion has taken place. I'm happy that the material for the upcoming NATO summit from our Central European side, which is very special right now, it is NATO's eastern flank. In many cases, we have direct borders to Ukraine, which right now is under the pressure of direct aggression from Russia. There is war, which Russia started by attacking Ukraine. So it's good that today we have got this common position and that we were able to discuss the most important issues. I'm delightful and I'm grateful for that, as I said to you, Mr. President, but also I would like to express my deep gratitude with the presence of Secretary General of the North Atlantic Alliance, Mr. Jens Stoltenberg, whose presence not only adds prestige to our meeting, but whose presence shows that indeed our part of NATO, NATO's eastern flank, today is in a special situation, being on the one hand the bastion, the border of defense of NATO against, I regret to say that, the most probable direction of aggression against allied states, which could be indicated today looking according to the 360-degree principle, looking at different places where we have got NATO borders. Unfortunately, this border of NATO, the eastern border of NATO in our part of Europe, today is potentially the most threatened one and the most exposed one, both due to the threat of direct invasion, direct Russian attack, but also due to the still ongoing hybrid threat from Belarus, but also due to a potential attack from Belarus, which theoretically is an independent and sovereign state, but we know perfectly well that the Belarusian regime actually is totally dominated by Moscow today, and today it just carries out Russian orders. And to say that there is a clear difference between the Russian army and the Belarusian army, I regret to say that, unfortunately, but today this would be a very far-fetched statement, because many experts actually claim that in practice the Belarusian armed forces is nothing else but almost part of the Russian army, and it is subject actually to the orders and guidelines from Moscow. So these were the most important topics that we raised today during our discussion. I'm also very happy and satisfied that our meeting today was attended also by the President and the Prime Minister of Finland and Sweden, new allies in the North Atlantic Alliance. This is a living proof that the open door principle to NATO is working, that new countries are joining NATO. This is a huge benefit for the security for NATO. So this benefit stemming from the joining of these two countries cannot be overestimated. We are delighted that they also participated in our meeting. Our northern neighbors from Finland, they have got a direct border with Russia, and they have got the longest border with Russia from all NATO countries. It is more than 1,000 kilometers long. We also had our extremely important allies from Sweden taking part, and it is fair to say they are a military superpower, a maritime superpower on the Baltic Sea, and they are a huge support for our security in this part of Europe along NATO's eastern flank. So I'm really delighted that today we're able to have them in our discussion, which was also participated by Secretary General of NATO, and we're able to discuss all the security issues in this company. Of course, we talked about the upcoming NATO summit. We also discussed, as I have already mentioned, the war which was started by Russia and Ukraine. When Russia attacked Ukraine, this is a still ongoing war because the Russian aggression is going on all the time, and we keep asking ourselves the question not only how to help Ukrainians stop this Russian aggression, but first of all how to repel it and how to end this war at the end of the day according to the principles of international law, through the fact that Ukraine will regain control over its internationally recognized territories, which are occupied by Russia today. These were the fundamental questions we were asking ourselves. And of course, in this context, what kind of support we should be giving as NATO member states, especially in the long term, to Ukraine. We were discussing all the activities which we have been carrying out and which we have carried out so far. We also have been discussing initiatives which we need today, which our countries are part of. I presented today our priorities for the upcoming NATO summit in Washington. I spoke about the three core issues which we as Poland want to additionally raise. First of all, this is further strengthening of deterrence and defense capabilities of NATO. Secondly, things connected with the realization of Euro-Atlantic ambitions of Ukraine. And thirdly, also the revision of NATO's approach to Russia. And let me explain you what I understand through this. As regards further enhancement of deterrence and defense, first of all, we should fully implement our decisions from Madrid and Vilnius NATO summits. We should make sure that we implement all those decisions and tasks so that the defense of every inch, every piece of land of NATO countries can be fully achieved. This requires us to implement all the assumptions under the regional plans and what we have adopted so far as part of NATO. These actions require, as we believe, speeding up. They require to be fully implemented, and they also require closer cooperation by member states so that every country can actually indicate those concrete units which will be responsible for carrying out activities, especially in terms of faster redeployment of troops, in case there is a real danger for security, in case any eastern flank NATO state is threatened. That is a very important element for sure. The second thing is something that we have been discussing for quite a time right now, and I'm sure you have heard about it. I proposed that we should talk to the NATO countries and say to them that, first of all of us within NATO should achieve the level of 2% of GDP spending on defense. And this is the pledge which we adopted back in 2014 in Wales as NATO members. But our position is that this level should be further increased by NATO member members in the future. That is because we are seeing Russian aggression today, and as a matter of fact, we're saying that Russia is restoring its former policy, the policy of Soviet Russia. This is the policy back from the Cold War, and during the Cold War, NATO members were spending 3% of their GDP on defense. That expenditure was effective enough for the West, for the free world, to win the Cold War. And because of that, we believe that in order to prevent a real war, a true war, in order to prevent warfare, increasing this defense spending is an important task, and it should be implemented by NATO members in the nearest future. And that is why I want to articulate this proposal during the NATO summit by saying that members should strive to further enhance their defense spending when they achieve the level of 2% first, because that level in the future, the level of 3%, is going to be an adequate level, we believe, to keep the true security guarantees in place. So that is something I will talk about. The next point is the Euro-Atlantic aspirations of Ukraine. All of us support Ukraine's aspirations to join the European Union, but we in Poland also support very decisively the opening of accession negotiation process to NATO. And I understand that through this, I understand that we should officially invite Ukraine to start the process that would initiate the ratification process. Of course, all the NATO countries have to agree to the membership, which means that the whole process is a long-term one, is a long-lasting process. It is obvious to us that Ukraine cannot become a full member of NATO before the war comes to an end. But we believe this process should be ongoing, because it also demonstrates, in this way NATO demonstrates vis-à-vis Russia, that the aspirations of the Ukrainian people to belong to NATO are listened to, are understood, and are implemented. And no threats from Russia, no threats can stop either the aspiration of the Ukrainian people to belong to the free world. It is not going to stop the free world to keep the door for Ukraine open. So this issue of the full-fledged Euro-Atlantic membership of Ukraine, both to the European Union and to NATO, is a very crucial issue to us. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, the third point. Today, still, unfortunately, many NATO members, in their rhetoric, when they speak about Russia, mention the NATO-Russia Founding Act. Our position is that this act has not been valid for a long time. In fact, we believe that Russia violated this act, actually repeatedly. It turned it into ashes, so we have to claim that it is dead. We should consider it as terminated by Russia, and we should just accept the fact that there is no such agreement between NATO and Russia. Today, Russia is not a country which would lead a dialogue with NATO. Today, Russia has a hostile attitude. Today, Russia is an aggressor in Ukraine. It is an aggressor vis-à-vis the free world, and it should bear the consequences of that, we believe. It should be treated in that way. In the second part of our meeting, we discussed, as I have already mentioned, the long-term support for Ukraine. I was saying how this support looks on the Polish side. I stressed that the hub, which today, and actually from the beginning of the Russian aggression against Ukraine, we have used this hub to provide military support to Ukraine. First of all, military support, but also humanitarian support for Ukraine. I'm thinking about the hub in the city of Rzeszów. It is operational. We are maintaining it as Poland, also with support of our allies. It is functioning, it is operating, and the transports to Ukraine keep going through it. We have also discussed participation in different initiatives, among others. We have been talking about the Czech ammo initiative. Poland is a part of it as well. 2 weeks ago, we discussed it in Prague, which means that this question is still on the agenda. It is still valid. We need more of such initiatives. We need to tighten our cooperation. We also need to set up common formats, for instance, for the production of ammunition, so that we can respond to all the needs that we have today, and we should also take care for shortening the supply chains so that deliveries are provided fast to our countries, and so that we can collect enough ammunition and other resources. So, ladies and gentlemen, these were the most topical issues which we discussed today. Once again, let me express my gratitude both to Mr. President, the host of our today's meeting, to the President of Latvia. Thank you to Secretary General of NATO as well as the one who is at the helm of NATO. Thank you for organizing the meeting today. Thank you for hosting us, and thank you for participation and support for the work of the B9 as part of NATO. Thank you so much.
Now,
President Rinkiewicz, dear Edgars, thank you for hosting us. President Duda, dear Andrei, and also President Klaus Johannes, thank you for co-chairing this very important B9 summit. We have just finished important discussions on our preparations for upcoming NATO summit and how to further boost our support for Ukraine. The B9 countries play a critical role in NATO's strengthened deterrence and defense. You host our 8 multinational battle groups. You have increased the readiness of your forces. You lead by example on defense spending, and you are on the forefront of allied support to Ukraine. Since 2014, NATO has implemented the largest reinforcement to our collective defense in a generation. We have put in place the most comprehensive defense plans since the end of the Cold War. We have more troops on higher readiness, backed by substantial naval and air power. And there is increased defense spending across the whole NATO alliance. So let there be no doubt as to our ability to defend against any adversaries. NATO has the forces, resources, capabilities, and the political will to defend every ally. At the NATO summit, I expect that allies will take decisions to further strengthen our deterrence and defense, agreeing to a greater role for NATO in coordinating training and equipment for Ukraine, and committing to a long-term financial pledge. Since Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022, allies have provided around 40 billion euros worth of military support to Ukraine each year. We must maintain this level of support for as long as necessary to ensure fresh funding every year. Credible long-term support sends a clear message to President Putin that he cannot wait us out. So, thank you so much for hosting me. It's always a great pleasure to participate in the B9 meetings. Thank you.
thank you, Mr. Stoltenberg, and we now open the floor for questions. And please introduce yourself and to whom you would like to address the question.
My question is to the Polish President and Secretary General of NATO. Recently, a Polish soldier was killed at the Polish-Belarusian border. He was killed by a migrant, and we are seeing intensified hybrid operations. So the question is, what should be done in order to make borders secure? And is it a good idea to create a buffer zone at the Polish-Belarus border?
Well, first of all, let me express my condolences to Poland for the soldier that lost his life, and my thoughts goes to his family, his loved ones. Second, I think what we see along the border between Poland and Belarus is an example of different types of hybrid activities, which we see as a pattern across the alliance, where migrants are used to try to intimidate neighbors, but also how we have seen other activities by Russia, by Belarus, to try to undermine the unity among NATO allies in providing support to Ukraine. We have seen different sabotage attempts, we have seen cyber attacks, and we also seen campaign of disinformation. And this makes it even more important that we are united, that we are agile, that we are not intimidated to not provide support to Ukraine, and also that allies continue to change intelligence to increase our awareness, and also to strengthen our protection of critical infrastructure, as allies have done over the last years. Then, of course, many of these concrete incidents are actually issues where national authorities have to take actions, police. We have seen arrests across the alliance, and of course there are ongoing legal processes, but what NATO can do is to increase awareness, exchange information, increase protection of critical infrastructure, and ensure that we share intelligence in a way that help allies to address these different types of hybrid threats.
Ladies and gentlemen, first of all, there are no words which I could use to express as President of Poland our sorrow and our pain due to the death of our soldier who died in defense of our homeland, who died in defense of the Polish border, who died in service while protecting our border. He was murdered on that border. He was killed. He was stabbed with a knife. And this is an absolutely tragic situation for us. So we join in pain with his loved ones. And let me assure you of one thing. As Poland, we are going to prosecute the murderer until we get them, as long as we get them, as we detain them. Yesterday, special guidelines have been released, and the actions, the activities are going on. That is how much I can say on this one. Now, concerning the border, we are protecting our border as much as we can. The Prime Minister announced that there will be a buffer zone created. Let me remind you that a situation of an extraordinary situation was already there before, introduced at the border. I do not know the details at this point. I do not know what the Polish government will be willing to propose, so it is difficult for me to answer the question right now. But one thing is certain: we should take all the necessary steps to make sure that not only the border is as safe and as tight as it gets, but also to make the security of all our compatriots stronger, to tighten the security of Poland, but also we should go to all lengths to provide the security, to enhance the security of our soldiers and officers who are guarding our border. This is of fundamental importance, which takes precedence over all others. This is the most crucial thing. And this is also what I raised during our meeting today. I described the situation because as you know, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday I went to the vicinity of the border. I met the border guards. I also met our soldiers who are on service there as part of the task force who guards our border on a daily basis, and all these issues were discussed in detail. We also raised the tragic event on the border. We analyzed all of that. So such actions for sure will be taken in the nearest future. There will be also special laws introduced. Their aim is to enhance the security and also the possibilities our soldiers will have in order to repel the attacks in the border zone and generally attacks at Polish soldiers. So we are acting all the time. Tomorrow works will start on a draft law which I prepared as part of presidential legislative initiative. This act was prepared by the National Security Bureau.
Dzień dobry, Żaklina Skowrońska, Telewizja w Polsce. Panie prezydencie, chciałabym...
Żaklina Skowrońska, in Polsat Television. Mr. President, let me ask you about the presidential draft bill, your initiative on the act in law concerning the actions taken by the state authorities in case of external danger or threat. Do you expect that all the parties will support this draft bill and that all the parties will agree while working on this draft law? Thank you very much. Well, we call this a strategic act of law, and we work together with the Ministry of Defense on working it out. We worked both with the former government, the government of the United Right, with Minister Mariusz Błaszczak as defense minister, but we continued those works, and we cooperated with the current leadership of the Ministry of Defense. We cooperated also with Prime Minister Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, who is the current Minister of Defense. This act stipulates certain provisions. These provisions should be enhanced. They concern the use of weapons by the soldiers. There are further works now going on in the Ministry of Defense. This week work is going to start on this project in the Polish Parliament, and we trust that this work will provide a response to all of that, what is happening right now. We hope that soldiers will be more protected legally. They will also have more clear possibilities of when they can use weapons in case of a threat. But first and foremost, those new provisions will regulate a lot of other things which we have experience on due to this war. We want to defend our territory and be able to react quickly.
Good afternoon, Latvian television. I would like to ask everyone to comment regarding the following issue: failure to reach the agreement on all NATO countries supporting Ukraine, because not all countries that participated in today's summit believe in victory of Ukraine, such as Bulgaria, for example, and support for Ukraine is at the discretion of separate member states. Tukumi, would you like to address the question to everybody? Well, you are not entirely right. There is a joint communique that was adopted and will be distributed by the co-chairs after the summit, which describes in great detail how we are going to continue our support to Ukraine in future in the long run, and what kind of agreements will be required from the member states during the Washington summit. We are, of course, aware of some countries who have claimed that they will not provide direct military support to Ukraine. That's nothing new. I mean, such position has been held by those countries for a number of years, but nevertheless, we must work towards achieving a clearer agreement during the Washington summit with regard to what kind of support Ukraine could expect in future, what is going to be the membership roadmaps. All of that is described eloquently in the communication or the statement that will be circulated by co-chairs. We're aware of these different positions. NATO is aware of it, but I don't think anyone left the table not satisfied with the agreements that we reached today.
So first of all, I think it's important to remember that since the beginning of this full-fledged war, since the Russian invasion of Ukraine back in February 2022, all allies have been united. On the morning of the invasion, we agreed a very strong statement where we condemned the illegal Russian invasion of Ukraine, where we expressed our strong support to Ukraine and Ukraine's territorial integrity. And all allies are providing support to Ukraine in different ways. Part of the support is provided through NATO, through our comprehensive assistance package that helps Ukraine to build their future force and also provide different types of non-lethal support. And then allies are also providing in different frameworks military support to Ukraine. 99% of the military support to Ukraine is provided by NATO allies, but some allies are also focusing on the non-lethal support, while other allies are providing lethal support. Then, in the lead up to the Washington summit, we are now working on new important decisions to support Ukraine. I expect that we will be able to agree a NATO mission or a NATO stronger coordinating role in supporting Ukraine, providing training and security assistance. I am working for a decision to agree a long-term financial commitment, and also that we're able to agree to move Ukraine closer to membership. So yes, of course, there are some different views within the alliance as we prepare for new important decisions at the Washington summit. But as we have managed many times before, I'm confident that we'll also manage this time to agree on the exact framework for our support to Ukraine.
Szanowni Państwo, ja chcę...
Ladies and gentlemen, let me stress one thing. There is no member state in NATO which would not be supporting Ukraine, because as the North Atlantic Alliance, we are always speaking with one voice, and all the decisions which are articulated by NATO are joint decisions. So saying that this or another member of the North Atlantic Alliance has an extremely different opinion than the rest of NATO is not really reflecting the common decisions which we are taking together within NATO. Of course, we have different understandings, first of all, what it means for Ukraine to prevail, because yes, there are differences on this perception, and secondly, states are providing different kind of assistance to Ukraine. Some countries are being more resolute, they are providing more advanced military solutions, others less. Nevertheless, let me highlight that there is no single state which would not be supporting Ukraine as part of NATO.
Panie prezydencie, dzień dobry, Michał Gwardyński, telewizja.
Mr. President, Michał Gwardyński, Television Republika. I would like to ask about the detainment of Polish soldiers and this shameful silence that there was on part of the government. So you were not informed, Mr. President. The public opinion was not informed about those soldiers being arrested. Did you also talk about it during yesterday's sitting of the National Security Council? How about the leadership of the Ministry of Defense? Did they explain to you and did they say how they are going to facilitate this information process? Did they explain to you that they will inform you as head of the military about the actions? Were there any explanations given to you, sir? Yes, yesterday this topic was discussed at our meeting, and it was discussed both at the National Security Council. We also raised it during my visit in the task force, because that is where I talked to representatives of the military police, who explained to me all the issues connected with the details of the detention. And let me say the following. As I said yesterday, this issue needs to be analyzed in details very calmly, and this is the way we should proceed. Please remember that the military forces at the border are not only soldiers who are carrying out patrols on the border, but there are also military officers, military police officers. This is also part of the military, and they are also present at the border. Having said that, we raised that topic in our discussions. Let me also stress that what the military police did, nor the detained soldiers, nor the defenders of the detained soldiers, the lawyers, neither of them complained against those actions. I know details how the detention process was carried out, and I would like to urge everyone to stay calm on this issue, because there are a lot of gossips and untrue information which is being disseminated concerning the way in which the soldiers were detained. This issue is being analyzed. Now, concerning the information exchange, we also talked about it with the leadership of the Ministry of National Defense. Also, we discussed this issue with the command of the Polish Armed Forces, and adequate conclusions have been promised to be taken. There will also be legal provisions which will be worked out by means of new legislative solutions.
This concludes our press conference. Thank you all.